Hi, I'm Lee Teschler with Machine Design Magazine. We're here with Howard Lynn from Cicoil Corporation. Howard's going to tell us a little bit about silicon molded cable. Howard, what's special about the cable that we have here today?
They're unique in the fact that the cable is actually contains wires totally encased in clear silicone. And you can get anything from as small as 44 gauge to as big as 4 gauge and everything in between. We can also put hollow tubing in the cable. And the cables are extremely flexible because of the silicone encasement.
How exactly do you make this molded cable?
And essentially it's an extrusion process where the wires and the conductors and the tubing comes in this side, and then we have a special proprietary process where it adds the silicone, and essentially the cables come out in a continuous extrusion. And it's done under a very high heat, and it's done in a very controlled atmosphere. And the benefit of that is you're able to very accurately control the jacket dimensions and the thickness of the silicone, and we can control that very precisely, and also the shape of the cable as well.
Where would you typically use this stuff?
These cables are used in a wide variety of applications. Anywhere you need to have cable for a very extreme environment, because they're silicone, and I'll show you a little bit later some of the extreme environment characteristics of the cables. So, for example, they're used actually on the space shuttle, they're used in satellites, they're used in missiles, because they can take very high and very low temperatures. And they're also used in any kind of robotic flexing application. For example, semiconductor equipment is a very common use for these kind of cables. Medical equipment, because the combination of the wires and the tubing, you're able to put pneumatics through it and also fluids if you need through the cables, along with the power and the signal conductors.
What's the flex life of something like this?
The flex life is rated for a minimum of 10 million cycles, and we've tested our cables for over 70 million cycles, and some customers have run them for over 100 million cycles. So the flex life is extremely long flex life, and that's a combination of the silicone rubber we use and also the conductors that we use, which are extremely finely stranded wires, which gives you a very, very flexible small bend radius and gives you long flex life as well.
Can you mold any kind of conductor in a cable like this?
You can mold any kind of conductor in. It's a copper we could put in there. We could put silver-plated wire, insulated wire, shielded wire, fiber optics. We can put coax. We have video transmission cables. And as I mentioned, also tubing. We could put hollow tubing through. So basically anything we can feed linear through our extrusion equipment that can take the higher temperatures, 200 to 300 degrees Fahrenheit, we can extrude in the cable.
I understand you have an environmental demo that you can show us.
Yes, these cables are extremely, as I said, it's silicone, so it's good for minus 65 up to 260 degrees Celsius, and it's impervious to oil, to water. You can operate these underwater and salt water. They're inert, perfect for a clean room. They have zero particulates. I got a little demonstration for you here. I can show you how the cable can take the high temperature. This blowtorch operating at 1,000 degrees, you can see it burning the wood, doesn't do anything to the cable. That's just an example of the high heat capabilities of the cable, and obviously it can take extremely cold temperatures as well.
And how long could you hold that torch on the cable without having a problem?
You can see if you hold it for a while, it never actually burns. It'll actually just turn a little crystallized and white, but it actually will not burn because the cable jacket is pretty much 100% pure silicate or silicone. So it will never flame. And we're on some applications, we're on outdoor microwave towers, and they used us because they put 200,000 volts through the cable, and every other cable start on fire, and ours wouldn't even start on fire. At that extreme heat, it basically just crystallizes into silicate or sand.
Does UV from sunlight have any impact on it?
UV, no, it has. UV has very, very little impact. We've had cables in outdoor applications on radar antennas for years, exposed to sunlight, exposed to rain and all the elements in the outdoor, and they still retain their flexibility and operate for years. Under UV, eventually over time, you're going to get a little more cloudy, and you're going to have that impact, but it's not going to affect the performance or the flexibility of the cable.
What method of attachment can you use for attaching cables to connectors?
Well, our cables are because they have conductors in there, you can easily just strip them off and put them into standard connectors. So this is an example of some standards D commercial connectors. That's a Molex power connector. And we can do this in-house, and we supply cables complete with connectors, or the customer can do this. It's very simple to strip back because the silicone actually encases the conductors, but it's not bonded to the conductors. So you can strip it just like you strip any wire, and then you just have standard wires, and you can crimp and attach those just like you would any kind of wire.
Can you tell us about how you attach this stuff to surfaces?
Yeah, this is a new patented product that we introduced. We call it strip mount, and what it is there's actually a fiberglass reinforced strip that we put in the cable, and this can be put anywhere in any cable. And what this strip allows you to do is it allows you to attach the cable directly to any surface. So you can just drill right through the cable with a screw and it attaches to any surface. So you don't have to worry about cable management or cable tracking. It doesn't harm any of the conductors at all. So it's a very simplified way to attach the cable exactly where you want it and how you want it without worrying about cable management and cable ties and the difficulties associated with those. And this is actually strong. It's reinforced fiberglass, so it'll hold over 250 pounds of holding force.
How does the cost of this cable compare to some of the competing technologies?
Well, in a flexible flat cable, really the main competing technology would be a Teflon sleeve. And what they do is they have a Teflon sleeve and they insert wires into that sleeve. And the drawback to that is the wires are loose in the sleeve, therefore they're moving and they're chafing and rubbing against each other, so you get more wear and you get less life in an application. And then also because they're just joined at a few points, the Teflon sleeves are more likely to separate and come apart. And also with our technology, we're able to really put whatever conductors are needed in the cable, and we can range from 4 gauge to 44 gauge in the same cable. Whereas a Teflon sleeve, you're limited by the size of the Teflon pod, so you're kind of limited to what you can put in the cable. Now the other benefit is they're usually limited to about 14 feet of continuous length. With our cable, we can make these thousands of feet of continuous length. So if you do need a longer cable, then we can do that as well.